Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today has created a rum distillery and a hotel, but mainly creates art as one of New Orleans' most prominent contemporary painters. His instantly recognizable style graces New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival posters and gallery walls around the world. He is the subject of a new WLAE documentary, Michalopoulos, The Art of Celebration, which premieres October 23rd on the opening night of the 2025 New Orleans Film Festival. Here to talk about all that and more is James Michalopoulos. James, welcome to Let's Talk, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I should start off by thanking you for helping decorate my house. I have a couple of your Jazz Fest posters on the walls. They look great. Got to figure you've done what, 8 of those now? Does that sound right? About eight Jazz Fest posters?
Is the total, yeah.
First one I remember was back in '98. I think you did Dr. John. Was that a big deal for you to get a Jazz Fest poster commission back then?
Yes, it was. It's still a big deal for me to get a Jazz Fest commission. I consider it very important, a way of contributing to the city. It's a big opportunity to celebrate an artist, and it's a very interesting challenge. I mean, you've got to come to terms with a particular personality, an artist, and try to work some sense of their style, their energy, and do something that's fun and creative and alludes to the life that we live here in the city, and put it all together in such a way that people are attracted to it, that it actually works out to be a valid statement of our culture. And so if you take it on that level, there's a lot of layers to it.
Well, yeah, I remember you did the one of Aaron Neville. You had the doves flying up behind him, which was very evocative of his kind of heavenly voice kind of thing. The Fats Domino one was great. I mean, so much joy was coming out of your portrayal of Fats in that picture. So you, obviously, these are artists that you spent time with their music, I guess. I mean, or actually, let me back that up. Do you pick the subjects that you do, or does Jazz Fest come to you and say, hey, we want you to do a poster, and then you say, how about so-and-so, or do they say, hey, we'd like you to do one of so-and-so?
Well, it's a little of both. Mostly it's at their direction. And typically what happens is they have several artists. They're always wondering about who it is that they're going to celebrate next. And so they will imagine a short list, and then they approach you with it. And so there's a little bit of a back and forth, They ask my opinion too, and I get to talk about who I'm excited about and who I'm not as excited about. So,
Okay.
So it goes well like that.
I want to ask you to name those. Your most recent one here in 2025 was Tank and the Bangas, contemporary band, really good. And you took a little bit different approach. I mean, in the past, you've tended to do more close-up portraits of the artist. This one you did more of a distant sort of scene shot. So why the different approach on that 2025 Tank and the Bangas poster?
Well, it's kind of to have a different approach on it. That there has always been a historic sort of focus on that one singular personality and a lot of centrality. It's essentially a portrait and some ancillary elements. And this time around, I wanted to kind of like profile the Jazz Fest and Tank in it. And also was probably very influenced by the fact that Tank's performances are often a celebration. Yeah. There's a party going on the stage, and their party, and then there's often another party going on outside in the crowd. And so really, that was a big part of it. And I also really was very interested in kind of just a reflection on the Jazz Fest itself, the grounds. And I did a lot of that from memory. And that just shows you how your memory can take you, But it influenced definitely by the early days of the Jazz Fest. But a lot of fun to put that all together, get her in there in the midst of all those tents and the brouhaha going on. It was really a riotous event. And they did, they're good. The people that direct me, the art directors that are interacting with you, they have a tendency to want to, corral the event. They want to keep it in a workable format. So there's that too. You don't have a full absolute swing at your disposition.
Right. It's not a complete blank check to do whatever you want. You have to do it within certain parameters.
No swear words, for example.
Right. But I mean, sometimes I think as an artist, it's good maybe to operate within certain parameters. I mean, that's a different kind of challenge, I think.
That's true. Life has all different forms of suffering, and then there's a very clear one here. Yeah.
Well, you know, but you've always been, your art has always been tied in with music. I mean, you worked with the House of Blues production arm doing decorations, set decor for their stuff. You did NBC's In Concert. You did set decorations for that. So obviously you see a relationship between what you do and musical expression.
Definitely. I've worked, the foundation of this really is life in New Orleans. I feel like no matter what it is, whenever it was, there's in the background, there's some music going on. And, it's kind of what permeates the air here. It's like, it's H2OM, and
the music element. Yes,
right,
yes,
exactly.
yes.
It's always there, and so I felt always comfortable with that. I've always loved music. Wanted to be a musician for a while. Never was good enough at it, but I loved it, and I've been an avid dancer and follower of the musical scene for many years. So the influence is natural, effortless, and I allow it to play into my work. All of these posters are heavily infused by the influence of the musician. I immerse myself in their work, their performances. I am living their music for a while and allow myself, hopefully, to just be taken by it. And it's a wonderful voyage. You not only you're learning about, their particular musical style, you learn about their life. It's the whole life, because for most musicians, their life is almost inseparable from their music anyway. And great pleasure, to take that on. It's an assignment to really get into somebody, to build a kind of visual biography of them.
I like to say with my work with the newspaper, I write about musicians, not music. I tell the musician stories, which inevitably is the story of the music. So you kind of, I think, do a similar thing with when you paint them as well, sort of thing. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is James Michalopoulos. There's a comment in the documentary about you that's coming out where someone talks about how your depictions of buildings in New Orleans, which is kind of really how you made your bones, I guess, was painting a lot of the architecture in New Orleans, that the buildings seem to dance in the way that you paint them, which reminds me of an expression that writing about music is like dancing about architecture. It's not an exact fit, but you make it work. I mean, is that a valid critique of your depiction of buildings, is that they seem to dance on the paintings?
I think it's a fair comment. Absolutely. There was a time when I kind of had a formalized approach. When I would start out a piece, I'd look at it and kind of just ask myself, what is this building telling me? And I'd kind of take it, and it was always in a lyrical direction. It's not an strictly formal interpretation in it by any means. I mean, it's just like a gestalt. And it says, go this way. And I go that way. I follow it. It's hard to rationalize how that actually happens. But I mean, that thing has got an energy, and it wants to go in a certain way. And my job is to be supple, to be a aid and supplicant in a way, to serve the enlivened or released expression of that subject. So in a way, I just go, okay, take me, and I'm gone with it, And it's an interesting thing because your mind plays back in the middle of that, and then you're like, well, I should take it this way or that way, or that's not so good, or one thing or another. These other considerations start showing up. But for me, there is this very interesting sort of dialectic between just a release, and a letting go, a trusting, in fact. That's the element of it. And I was in it late last night. It's funny, I was working on a piece and I had this tree arching up over this cottage, and it was all just limbs, no leaves. Okay. And I was like, I need leaves. I want leaves. Don't do leaves. These limbs were perfect, right? I mean, I didn't need to touch it, but I just hemmed and hawed for about 20 minutes, and then I picked up the knife and I went at it, and I left with it foliated. And I felt more alive for it too. You know, it was like, I got out of my way, I got out of the reason, took a break, and I went crazy on it.
It demanded leaves. Ultimately, it needed leaves.
It definitely needed those leaves. I could have gotten by without it. You know, I definitely could have. But no, for me, you know, and I don't even know how I ever did it without leaves, but I did. And so there it was, ended up, I got into the sidewalk too. I got into the sidewalk a little bit into the street. I did the steps again, as it goes. And I'm going back there again today. We're going to see how it takes me.
Are you just driving around the city and you see a particular building and you say, yeah, I'm going to paint that one, or is it more abstract where you just start from scratch? But
it's both. Mm-hmm. Definitely, as you said, driving around, I'm on the lookout. I'm always interested. And I mean, look, if I see a painting while I'm driving, I'm immediately arrested by it. You know, I want to stop. I want to take a photo, do a sketch, or recollect it. But yeah, I'm on the lookout constantly. Mm-hmm. And I mean, part of my job is to be able to be available for that. You know, if you see something that's exciting, that elicits a deep response, I mean, I got to pull over, I got to take the time, I got to stop. And so frequently, the way that my life looks is I'm headed somewhere, I see something, oh my God, I stop, I pull over. I always have my equipment with me, and I take a photograph, and then the next thing you know, I'm making the block, and then the next block, and then the next block, and then the next block. And then I spent 2.5 hours rooting around Napoleon Avenue and the Irish Channel. And I feel like it's a tremendous gift. I don't know when I'm going to get around to painting that neighborhood, but boy, I got some great reference material.
Do you spend a good bit of the year in France? You have a studio in the Burgundy region, I believe,
right? Yeah.
So are you similarly inspired by cows as you drive around the French countryside? Because I know you've painted some cows and stuff. I mean, yeah. Do they give you the same, do you say, oh yeah, that cow is one that deserves to be in a painting right there?
Well, no, they're not quite as exciting to me.
As the buildings in New Orleans.
No, they don't light a candle to a double.
Shotgun double, right?
No, they don't. But they are interesting. They're neat animals. And they're exotic, you know, that's a lot of like what it is. You know, I have a little farm, and so I rent my front field to the farmer, actually give it to him just to keep the grass cut. Mm-hmm. And the cows come up, you know, and so I can be on my front porch and a cow is like less than 20 feet away. And I don't have that same experience in the French Quarter. And so it is arresting, you know. So I stop and, you know, I spend a little time with a cow, and you know, they become more interesting to you and more demanding of you know, reflection, because you're surrounded by them. So that's the way it goes for me. Like wherever I am, that's where I'll start, you know, thinking about a next picture. Being a picture maker, right? I'm going to put those elements together. But also, to be fair, you know, to your question, the one before, there's a fair amount of the time where I'll just say, okay, I'm going to go somewhere with an image. Mm-hmm. I want to make something, and I pull it out of my head. So there are months, in fact, where I don't do anything but what I imagine or recollect. Mm. So I don't refer to anything in particular. And it's a great way to work. It's less bothersome in the sense of not having to reference something else and to reconcile. All I have to do is refer to the image in my head and then go from there. And so it's a lot of fun to work that way, and it's different. And I do a fair amount of mixing of the two. So, you know, sometimes I'm referring to a photo or a sketch, and then I'm going to make up the rest of it, which is, you know, it's fair game. You know, this is about illuminating the spirit of something, not necessarily an illustration, a photographic illustration. So, you know, you can take your liberties.
You're writing a novel, not a newspaper article.
That's right.
There you go.
There you go.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is artist James Michalopoulos. So you arrived in New Orleans in 1979, but now for a number of years, you've been splitting your time between here and France. I mean, is it jarring to go from this rural existence in France, then to come back and your compound, for lack of a better word, your cluster buildings right on the edge of the Marigny there off Elysian Fields? That's a very urban, funky New Orleans environment. I mean, does it take a while to adjust when you go between rural France and coming back to New Orleans?
Yes, it does. Yeah. About 30 minutes or so.
30 minutes.
Yeah, it does take a bit. It is a different world for sure. But man, I know that world so well. I've been in that neighborhood for 40 years.
In New Orleans, yeah. The New Orleans neighborhood, right?
And in that neighborhood in particular. I mean, really, I've, lived in and out of that neighborhood. I've lived uptown too, but, I know it so well. And it is different. It is a very different world. But the Marigny has a kind of country quality to it. When you get off into the side streets, and there's a lot of trees and bumpy sidewalks, and it's real quiet. So there are, many, many moments where you're off in a backyard in the Marigny, and you could be out in the parish. You could be, in Amite City in a backyard. So there's a country-like quality to that, and to be fair, you find that in other parts of New Orleans too. The slowness, which is it's a wonderful aspect. But yeah, it is a big difference. It's a change. I went for a bike ride last night at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I rode up into the quarter a little bit, and I rode up into the Marigny some. And yeah, it's very urban. There's nothing like that going on. I'm in France, where my village, there's, I think, 35 people normally. In the summer, the village population explodes to about 44. And so it's pretty quiet. If you see 3 cars in a day, it's a busy day, so.
Have you made a pilgrimage to Monet's house in France?
Not yet.
No?
No. No. Okay. I've got all kinds of photos and things, and I think about them because I have a pond, and I have pond, and one of my guys took it upon himself to put lilies in there about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm so glad he did, because I got the most amazing photos this year, and of course I was thinking about Monet. I'm very interested to go see it. It's complicated. He actually had a relationship with a few other writers at the same time, and had an interesting life going on in this village not far north of Paris, I think it is. So yeah, I'll get up there someday, one day.
Yeah, fellow artist. I mean, you should go, check out his crib and see how, see what inspired him. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Marigny, I mean, you have transformed that neighborhood to a certain degree with the things you've done. Most recently, Hotel Pompadour. Why did you decide to get into the hotel business, and why did you name it Hotel Pompadour?
Okay. Almost accidental as far as the hotel business is concerned. At some point, I realized that, I had this large property that I bought many years ago, and the old Shane Funeral Home. So I'm in the barn on the right-hand side of it. That's where I have my actual art studio. I'd used many of the other rooms for various things, a print studio and a gallery and exhibition space. And, at some point we're really underutilizing this. And the neighborhood's changing. The neighborhood went from 100 plus abandoned homes to one of the most thriving parts of the city.
Yeah.
And so, it felt like, in keeping with the development of the neighborhood, that I would consider some other possible further, more intensive uses of the other side of the building. And so I considered apartments. I have a small real estate business on the side of my art business, and I'm always developing something. I have been for 40 years. So I have a small collection of buildings that I like to work on. And so I thought, well, okay, I love hotels. I love hospitality, really. The notion of welcoming people and expressing gratitude seems like such a organic part of the life of the city, and to some degree the life of Louisiana and the South in general. So I love the idea of being able to finesse a space that says to people, we know how to live well and we want to share that with you. And that's so much of like what our life is about here in the city. So we're spending all this time celebrating down there in the Marigny in one way or another. And when we're not in costume, we like to do regular work. So I said, let's go ahead and build a hotel, And so it's a fun space. It's a boutique hotel. We're 14 rooms and going to add another 18 before too long. And it is called the Pompadour, as you said. And it's, of course, named after my hairstyle, my hairdo.
Yes. That would, again, be more writing the novel than the documentary. That's taking some artistic license, perhaps, with your hairstyle.
That's a lot of artistic license right there.
No, it's great. You have your artwork in a lot of the rooms. So, I mean, people are kind of immersed in your world when they stay there. So it's another artistic expression.
It's a totally, what do I want to say? It's a unique treatment of an older building. So every room is in its own right, different. We furnished it with eclectic items, antiques and expressive pieces. There's artwork in every room. There are central spaces, common spaces. We have a lovely terrace in the middle of the building. And we have some exciting surprises coming up also. But it is definitely a credit to the industry. I would say it's a unique offering in the city, and something definitely I would love to share with people. I hope everybody has a chance at some point to take a look over there.
Well, meanwhile, they can check out this new documentary that is all about you, Art of Celebration. Did you feel like, we've got 4 minutes left here. I mean, did you feel like you're at a point in your career where a documentary was appropriate? I mean, you have this huge body of work now, and you've done a lot of things. I mean, was it a hard sell for you to be the subject of a documentary?
No, it didn't show up for me like that. But I feel honored that people thought I would be a worthwhile subject. I hope they agree after having seen it, and that everybody's awake at the end of it.
That'd be good, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun putting it together. It was a great crew. I mean, this is a talented team here at WLAE, and they're hardworking, creative people, and so they keep you, they keep you moving. And their prompts and questions are, they're probing, challenging. So it's an opportunity for me to be circumspect, actually look a little deeper, actually to look, I mean, really, let's start right there. When you're going through life, you're lucky when you have a friend or a circumstance that actually says, okay, we see that you've gone from A to B and C. Now looking at that, why? And will you continue to D, and why? And so, for the first moment, you're probably going, geez, it never occurred to me, basically on an automatic roll here, and it can open up all kinds of things. And so there was a lot of that in this. And I'm very grateful for the depth and insight that the director and the crew in general brought to the work, and the demands that it pulled out of me.
Good. And like I said, I mean, at this point in your life, it's good to maybe self-reflect a little bit and figure out, look at how you got to where you are, and where does that lead from here?
Yes, right. Yeah.
The last 90 seconds here. How often do you have all these other things going on? Yeah. How often do you actually paint?
I paint every day.
Every single day, still?
Well, every day except the ones where I don't. So, yeah, I go to it. I mean, I have the idea. Look, I love to paint. And, It's where I get a lot of my energy. I enjoy the time that I spend there. And it, producing something like that, there's a really good feeling to it. I feel like I can do some good there. And I'm a really good sweeper. I can clean some things up too. And I feel good about that. But I don't spend my whole day doing that. And I don't spend my whole day painting either. But I go to both of them every day, And, unless I don't feel like it, to be truth to tell, if I don't want to work for a couple of days or a week, I'll take it off, But my general thing is, hey, if you've got a couple $100 worth of wet oil paint spread out and it's going to dry out, it's an inspiration to get you back over there before you're working with crumbled leaves. You want to be there and using that stuff. So I guess that's how it all started, So there's this energy for me to get in there and get on with it just about every day.
That's awesome. I mean, you've been doing it for this long and still that energy is still there, still undiminished. Well, great. Well, James, this has been really fun. Thank you for coming on and for giving me these insights about all that you do, and you do a lot, so continued success.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure. Really appreciate the interview and the time.
Great, thank you. Once again, that was James Michalopoulos. I am Keith Spera. I'll see you next time on Let's Talk.